Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett with Marilyn LeBlanc. If you like our channel, if you like what we're doing here, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, share with your friends. It's a real amazing, crazy busy time coming up this coming Saturday. On Moonwise, four astrologers are going to be talking about our talk on December 26th at noon Mountain Times here in Santa Fe. But it'll be available on Zoom, available through brownpapertickets.com. Look up Gates of Hell Are Open. And we're all going to be talking about what's going on in 2021 because really these energies there's some things coming on this week that are going to kind of be setting up the stage for this next year, aren't there, Mary Lynn?
There are indeed, Michael. We have lots of things happening at the beginning. Well, this coming weekend, Jupiter moves into Aquarius, Saturn. I would keep wanting to say Sagittarius. Saturn moved back in there just during this past week, and Saturn was in Aquarius last spring until almost midsummer, and it went back into its Capricorn. But Saturn rules both of these signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, so it's in home territory. And Jupiter is going to be joining on the solstice. This coming Monday, we have the winter solstice. And I'd like to just start with the solstice. This is when the sun appears in the southern hemisphere to stand still and head back north again. And I see this, we've had different calendars throughout human history. And I see the solstice, the winter solstice, as the beginning of the solar year. And, because the solstice doesn't happen always on the 21st of December. Sometimes it's on the 20th, sometimes it's on the 22nd, but mostly on the 21st. But to stabilize a calendar, I don't know exactly the history behind it, but the world sort of decided we'll begin what I call the calendar year on January 1st. But on January 1st, the sun is already about 7-8 degrees into the sign of Capricorn. Whereas, if we lived totally by the planets, this Monday would be the beginning of a new year. And this new solar year is loaded with energy. When the sun is at the beginning of Capricorn with the winter solstice, we also have the planet that rules Capricorn in close by. It's not in its own sign, but it's in the next. Well, it is in its own sign. The next sign, Aquarius, right at the beginning. And so I find that very fascinating, but also, and this part you might find interesting. It's something that I revisited last night. The Sun-Saturn relationship to me, has a whole lot to do with the quality of a new year. And back in 2017. Saturn and the sun were beginning a new phase with each other at that particular year. Now they're in what we call a balsamic phase. They're 30 degrees apart from each other. And it kind of made me think about the Saturn cycle. The Saturn cycle varies from about 27 degrees to 30 degrees. Roughly rounding it up, every 28 years, 29 years, we have some kind of Saturn return. It varies. I know my first Saturn return, I was 30 years old, but the second one, I was a little bit younger than 60. I think I was 59. And so what I've noticed about the Sun Saturn's relationship in terms of this new solar year is that since 2017, they have been beginning the solar year in a balsamic phase. So
Mm.
they're going backwards through the phases. Several years from now, they will be out of the balsamic phase and into the last quarter phase, etc. But it'll take approximately 30 years for them to begin a solar year at 30. So, if one looks at one's Saturn Sun relationship in their chart, I have them in a last quarter, almost exact last quarter phase. So I looked at the years in which the solar years in which they began with the last quarter phase. And I'll tell you, the energy of that year for me was very indicative of a last quarter phase, which meant during that year, I had some kind of major shift in my consciousness that led to my behaving in different ways. And so, I hadn't really looked at it that way before. I've looked at relationships because I deal with process orientation all the time. And it was very insightful. I'm going to start offering that to people if they want to know what anything about the next year or which years are most critical for them. And of course, the relationship makes a difference. I mean, mine was in what we call a stressful it is all my life a stressful relationship, not in the sense of everyday stress, but in the sense of recognizing how much change is important for me based on my natal chart, and not to ignore it, not to refuse to do anything differently.
It's also
So anyway,
it's also your luminaries, right? You have a third quarter sun moon relationship too.
oh yeah, I've got a chart full of last quarter squares. I miss last quarter square, which explains my whole life. I have not lived. I don't know if it's typical anymore because I think things are changing so much on the planet that whatever. But started out in one lifestyle, shifted to another lifestyle, started out in one profession, shifted to another profession. My life, the people who've known me all my life, whom I find very comforting to be around.
Because
You
they
know,
get you.
often when we connect, it's always okay. What are you doing now? If I'm coming to visit, I remember hearing this. We just can't wait to have a discussion about where you're at now.
Isn't it nice to realize that sometimes that you're playing kind of like, I don't know, I think in some ways we play different roles for each other, right? And in this way, sometimes I think, because it's that third quarter aspect, I always think of the I didn't know that I didn't know.
Right.
It's like or the Russian doll
I
syndrome.
know.
Yeah, yeah, I know, right. Because you and I, of course, share, the sun moon things. I have a third quarter there, but then with my Saturn sun, I have a balsamic because I have my sun is in Aquarius and my Saturn is in Pisces. So
Also, this year's a significant year for you because
feels
they're in
like
that.
it.
They're in they're 30 degrees apart in the balsamic. They're ending. The balsamic phase is the last 45 degrees. So
Mine are
it's
27 degrees apart.
oh, right. Well, then it's very close. It's close enough.
And as
Orbit.
if that isn't enough, then, of course, this is a significant year. I mean, sun, you and I both have sun in Aquarius, right? Jupiter, the soul-centered ruler of Aquarius is in the process of moving into Aquarius. Saturn, the traditional ruler, is moving in there. It's, I think it's very interesting. You and I are going to be, of course, talking a little bit on this on the 26th, a little bit this weekend on Moonwise, of course, and then again on the 26th. But it's a very airy year. I mean, I think this thing of like, what are our ideas? What are we, being responsible for? What are our word diets? What are our information diets? What are we letting in this truth? I think, we're going to get a lot more of this, The Aquarian, I always think of Aquarian. I don't know if you look at it this way, but I really see Aquarians. You have to look at the traditional ruler, which is Saturn, and you have to look at the modern ruler, which is Uranus with it. Because I think if you only look at one of those planets, you're only getting half the Aquarius. And I think now, especially with the Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter, they've just been so full of all the energy coming in from Capricorn. We must have rules. We're gonna, we're the 1%. We're gonna tell everyone else how things are, and this is what the idea of success is. And then it switches into Aquarius, which is very high-minded, but also has a little bit of an autocratic issue because of the Saturn, right? And even an aspect of the Uranus, where it comes from, I'm a rebel, I understand. I mean, we see this, what's happening with the tech world right now, that all of a sudden, because I've been thinking about this for years, there used to be rules against, monopolies, but, Google, is basically monopolized the whole thing. Facebook's monopolized, they're buying all their competition up. And now finally the government's going, hey, wait a minute, something's not right here. This is no longer a fair marketplace.
Right. Well, and that's an element also, though, of Aquarius. See, there, Aquarius energy, and the Saturn part really sees the need for structure.
Right.
Because without structure, you have chaos, and then we're in Pisces or Neptune's territory, or even Jupiter's to some extent.
Or Uranus in the sense of, we're seeing aspects of it with, the rioting and things have been going on, right? Uranus is that energy that kind of inspires us to like step out and do something we normally wouldn't
Well,
do.
the revolution is a revolutionary energy, but it's got purpose. It's not like laissez-faire
Right.
kind of. There's an organizational slant to the Aquarian energy, and there's also a truth that Aquarius sees. I mean, in Saturn being one of the planets that does adhere to truth. I mean, we often think about it as a planet that has to do with karma. And behind karma is truth. Hey, look, your behavior created this mess. You've got to take care of it.
Yeah, because there's an because when you think about it, I always think of the AUTH words, authority, author, those are all Saturn words as well. And it's that thing, I forget which president was it, Dwight Eisenhower, whatever, the buck stops here. That's a very Saturn thing. And I think the hard part is here in the United States, we've been taught or led away from the idea of self-responsibility. Oh, that's someone else's need to take care of me for that. I can't, that isn't for me to step up to. Oh, I need to go and see my doctor to find out what's wrong with me. I can't do that for myself. All these things that we're like looking outside of ourselves, but the thing is without having some sort of a center author, authenticity operating within ourselves, there's no register or barometer against which we can compare. We're just either, like you said, you talked about again the chaos with Pisces with Neptune, but there's also it's also the merging, right? Like, oh, it's the herd mentality. Oh, it's okay. I hear it from my parents when I talk about food, the importance of eating organic food. Oh no, those people who make food have our best, have our best interests at heart. No, they don't. They're capitalists. They want to make money. They're putting things in your food that aren't food-based that your body can't digest.
Well, that's one of the factors that you kind of touched upon about Aquarius is, we want, this is kind of like goes to the Uranus myth. We want an ideal world. And so we recognize that the only way we can have that ideal world is to get everybody on the same page. So in order, it's sort of like we recognize where the world is right now, and it's very disturbing to we Aquarius people, and I'm not necessarily talking about Aquarius sons, people who have strong Aquarius energy, because it's not a comfortable place to be at. There is nothing ideal about people with ideologies that commit cruelties to other humans. Nothing perfect about that. In the myth, Uranus wanted beautiful children, and he only got it through having his creativity taken from him. I mean, that was the ultimate of his. Venus Aphrodite was the ultimate of his creativity. Okay, this is what you want. You had to pay a price for it. Aquarians recognize that there is a price for our freedom and for our ideals. And part of that price is that we have to help the field of consciousness raise so that everybody, or the a critical mass, it may not be everybody, you know, like the 100th monkey idea, a critical mass comes together to have an ideal union. And we're far from it at this time, and we've recognized that over the years many Americans have thought we had. And I mean, many of us grew up with educators telling us we have an ideal union, but in fact there was like this hatred festering under, you know, under the level of consciousness, of mass consciousness, that has come to our present reality. And maybe this relates to our entering the Aquarius age. And of course, when we talk about the 2000-year ages, they start at the end of a zodiac sign. So, you know, I used to think Dane Rudyard didn't have the Aquarius age starting until another 100, almost 200 years from now. But several astrologers who've researched on this think that we're in it. And I begin to, based on the Sabian symbols, I've begun to believe them, because the last Sabian symbol has been depicted as Babylon in ruins. And that's what we see. We see supposedly an ideal society, the American dream, the country that people want to come and be a member of. We see the beautiful aspects ruined, our immigration laws being uh, I can't, the words I'm thinking of I can't say. I mean, it just it's just you know, so we, if that is so, and I don't know exactly when this began. I mean, we could go back a decade or so, maybe two, and what? Yet we're going to be there for a while. If this is, it's not going to be it's not going to be like an overnight thing. You know, I mean, hopefully the new presidential administration, Joe Biden's, will do some things, but it's not going to be like quick fixes. And this, going back to the air energy, air is about relationships, whether it's relationships to ideas, concept, or whatever, but primarily it's relationships with each other. Gemini, the sign of Gemini, is the sign of the siblings, you know, and our peers. And Libra, the sign of committed relationships, not necessarily, I mean, even relationships in which there are serious agreements that have been expressed, whether in writing or, you know, verbally or whatever. You know, we think of husbands and wives normally, but it could be business partners.
Well, marriage is a contract. I mean, you're talking contracts, right?
Contracts, yes, written or spoken. And then Aquarius. Aquarius is all our friends, the people that we associate with, not just friends. And I always find this kind of, the word associate, interesting, because in the retail world, often these big companies they'll call them associates. Mm-hmm. And I've often found that interesting, because they're kind of trying to bring in that Aquarian energy. However, they don't have the equality that Aquarius really wants. I mean, they often take away their privacy. They offer them a pittance of their revenue, and that whole notion, you know, maybe now with this Aquarius energy being emphasized, with Jupiter being there for the next year and Saturn for the next 2.5 years. And then by that time, too, we should have Pluto entering it. Maybe we will see some, I think we're not through with some revolutionary energy, is basically what I'm saying.
Well, and I think, it's very interesting, one of the things that we talk about, I mean, so one part what we're talking about here is what's called the Grand Mutation. This is the switch of Jupiter and Saturn now going into air signs for the next while. And it's funny because a lot of people, it's actually getting press outside. We could actually see it in the night sky when you look out at night and you look out in the western sky and you look up there over these weeks, Saturn and Jupiter slowly coming together. And way back when, around roughly 2000 years ago, when the story is that Christ was born, that was another Jupiter Saturn conjunction. Mars was there as well. So you can imagine just how amazingly brilliant. But their closeness is also along those lines. We in astrology, we say conjunction and we give really wide orbs. But when you look up in the sky, we're talking millions and millions of miles, right? So that little thing that's like from our distance, a finger apart, is millions of miles, but but the way it lines up in relationship to how we're looking at it is what's really important. But as we step into this, I think we'd like to idealize the idea. It's part of this aspect of the Aquarian nature that things are going to be better, it's going to be good. But the truth is, I think there is that part of the Aquarian nature that is about giving it the veneer of equality, like you say. Let's call them associates, but let's take a little bit of their privacy. I don't know if you ever saw the movie V for Vendetta. It's this idea that that, and it's been what's been playing out in the world, for the last 30, actually forever. The idea that fear, you feed your public fear, and then what you do is you provide them the safety that, the safety things, you give them the police and the military and the other things to give them a sense of safety. But the truth is, it's already safe. It's just like you're making people believe it. And so I think that's where we have to come in with this idea of like, what is the truth? And find out what it is, so that we're not sitting here believing these things. But I think we're going to see both aspects. I mean, nothing ever completely goes away. And I think that part of the Aquarian nature that is very Saturnian and that likes that which came before and likes power is going to end up getting that conflict. Because, of course, while it's in Aquarius, it's being squared by its other ruler, Uranus in Taurus. So that's,
Right.
this whole thing is so beautifully orchestrated in a particularly attention getting way, I guess is what I'd say. Painful for some people and awakening for others and liberating for still others.
And that's a last quarter square with Uranus and Saturn, which, as we talked at the beginning of this session, is it. Well, Rudyard called it a change in consciousness, But the fact of the matter is, when you become aware of something that you weren't aware of before, it often compels you to change something that you're doing or how you're being. Attitude changes in attitude, changes in values, changes in awareness often affect our behavior. I mean, the first quarter square says you definitely behave differently. The last quarter square is like, oh, I know why I should be doing this instead of that.
I think of a perfect example. I know you've done a lot of work on yourself, and I've done some work on myself. And there's that idea they talk about, like, when we're growing up, it's like this idea of like, oh, well, when mom and dad change, then I'll be okay. Or when you change, it's always this thing outside. But the truth is, for those of us who have ever done any work, there's almost an odd, amazing, in the moment thing that happens. When you release whatever that thing is, that whoever that person is that you held that thing with, all of a sudden they're treating you differently. But the truth is, they're not treating you really any differently. It's just that you found a new relationship in yourself, right? And that's what's so beautiful. Because one of the things is, like, I think about Aquarians is that we are a cynic is a frustrated idealist, right? As someone who's been an idealist, and actually, I mean, I every once in a while as an Aquarian, I feel that everyone, I'll look at the world and go, oh my gosh. And then I have to like pull my attention away from whatever it is that's reflecting something not so ideal and go and look to something that is, because even in the midst of all the crazy, horrific things that have happened this year, there's been some amazing beauty and there's been some amazing growth. And, nothing, it's, that's the thing about dualities. We're experiencing something along a continuum. It's not usually all black or all white. It's some shade of this mixture of gray that has a certain amount of white and a certain amount of black in it, based on our perspective, what's going on, and then the people around us who are reflecting those things back to us.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So, people, if all of you out there that are watching this particular YouTube series we've done on Zoom, if you want to hear more about these energies, you definitely need to check out the event that we're doing on Saturday, the 26th, the day after Christmas at noon Mountain Time. It's called The Gates of Hell Are Open. And I think we've talked about a lot of hellish things today, and there'll be some more talk. Four of us, Michael and myself, joined by Aaron Sullivan and Daniel Fiverson, will be doing this talk. And you can purchase a link by going to brownpapertickets.com, and just search for the Gates of Hell or search for one of our names and it'll show up. And what, the $15, you get a link. If you can't be a participant in that link, because you'll be joining us on Zoom. We're doing this on Zoom. You'll be joining us on Zoom, but if you can't because of the timing, you will have access to this particular presentation afterwards. You can watch it at your leisure as many times as you want. So there you go.
Exactly. Another thing that's kind of fun is, each of us is going to be talking about a half an hour, and then at the end we're going to have a general question and answer. So if you have questions about not only what us four astrologers are going to be speaking about this coming year, but maybe something else that's relevant to what you see happening in 2021, please bring forth your question, and we'd love to do it. The only other thing I thought I was going to say, the other quote that I had was, Rodney King, back from, the LA rioting, he says, why can't we all get along? And I think that's, if there's one thing that I think with Aquarius, one thing with the relatability of all three of the air signs, by the way, all three air signs, Mercury is going to retrograde through each of them this coming year. I think this is really, we're all going to be recalibrated on the way we relate to one another, the way we think, the way we go about doing things, the way we plan. It's the pandemic is still going to be going on. That's an air-based thing as well. It's very, there are no mistakes, right?
Definitely not. Everything is when when we talk about everything being preordained, it's sort of weird.
It is, and it's hard, because I know
Now.
I don't mean to make light in any way, shape, or form, because I know that also there's extreme loss that's going on from many people. People are losing family members, have been sick themselves. The last couple of weeks, I can't even tell you how many friends and family members have gotten positive. Please be safe out there. Wear your mask. Do your social distancing. Save your social contacts for next year. There's going to be enough air for us all to get together next year. Hunker down. One thing about the solstice is it's the shortest day of the year, but it's also the hope. It's the return of the light. So it's meant for us to go inward. It's meant for us to kind of review things and spend time with ourselves, and then be able to move forward in the beginning of the year and step out in that way. So my blessings of safety and love to you all over this next week. Happy solstice. If you have something amazing you want to get started in your life, this Jupiter, the solstice would be a great day to launch it electronically. If you got something you want to put on the internet, this is really a powerful time. So thank you, Marilyn, for talking once again.
Oh, you're welcome, Michael. Thank you for doing this. And by the way, my website is up and functioning, moonwiseastrology.com. Check it out.
Perfect. And I'm available at coremichael.com. Thank you so much. If you like us, again, please hit subscribe, hit like, share with your friends. We're having fun. And two Aquarian suns, the Scorpio moons, talking about the interesting aspects of life. Have a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.